They once called it the capital of the world, a country that built a big empire, put its mark on the map, and made rules for others to follow. London's bankers set the pace for global money, and British engineers built railways across continents. Its language became the way for trade, law, and even people's dreams. For 200 years, Britain's story was about wealth coming to life, a place where numbers went up, and the future was for those who wanted it most. But history can trick those who stop paying attention. Now, the world sees Britain as rich like old families with fading glory, names on stone, beauty wearing thin. The wealth is still there, but it's hidden by old memories and stories, stretched by things no one seems to control. The GDP still looks good in global lists, and the skyline shines with tall glass buildings. But underneath, something is slowly breaking down. Productivity has stopped growing. Wages in most areas are lower than 15 years ago. The hope of getting better has turned into worry and standstill. For the first time, young people expect less than their parents. Costs, housing, food, energy, keep rising, while chances to succeed shrink. The gap between London and the rest of the country grows bigger every year, like a cut that won't heal. Living in Britain now means dealing with opposites. News talks about record-high house prices, but poverty creeps into suburbs and small towns that used to be safe. Rents go up. Child poverty hits new highs. Work doesn't guarantee a steady life anymore. The agreement between people and government, once a point of pride, is being quietly changed. How does a country that made rules become one that follows them? What do you call a place that looks rich but leaves more people feeling poor? This isn't a crash you can film. It's a slow forgetting, a quiet falling apart. The numbers don't yell, they whisper. Welcome to Economic Circuit, where we explain the forces shaping our world economy. From the past of big companies to today's changes, we make hard topics easy to understand. What does it mean to be rich when your wallet stays empty? For years, Britain said hard work pays off, that anyone could own a home and build a future. The numbers seemed to agree, until they didn't. Since 2008, something quiet slipped in. Real wages, after adjusting for price rises, have barely moved. In 63% of UK areas, pay is less than before the money crisis. Some lost 10 years, others, a whole generation. This isn't a short drop, it's the longest pay squeeze in over 200 years, not seen since Napoleon's time. Even when wages seem to rise, it's not real. Before the crash, weekly pay grew 1.7% each year, now, just 0.2%. The average worker earns £230 less per week than if old trends continued. The TUC says, if wages followed the old path, workers would be £10,400 better off yearly. But the pain isn't the same for everyone. In London, wealth shows with £10 cocktails and rooftop bars, full of hope. Outside those rich areas, tough times bite hard. Even in London, 94% of areas have pay below 2008 levels. In the Northeast, half the places lag despite a rising minimum wage. The difference between regions turns into a fixed fate. London's work output is 45% above the national average, while the Northeast is 30% behind. Once a country of shared growth, the UK now splits, rich cities surrounded by poorer areas. If second cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow grew like London since 1992, the country would have £120 billion more. Moving up, the British dream, is harder than ever. Since the Industrial Revolution, kids now expect smaller lives than their parents. The saying, work hard, save, buy a house, feels empty, repeated by leaders who don't believe it. Work growth has stopped. Output per hour has grown just 0.5% yearly since 2019, a quarter of pre-2008 rates. The US is now 28% more productive than the UK. 13 of 20 big UK areas have seen work output drop since the pandemic. Yet leaders stay hopeful. Wait, recovery is near. For millions, recovery is a ghost, talked about by those who measure success with averages, not real life. 21% of Britons live in poverty after housing costs, almost double the OECD average. 14 million adults and 4.3 million children are below the line, with nearly 1 in 3 kids in a rich country. An old saying says an Englishman's home is his castle. Now, the drawbridge is up, leaving most outside. Housing once meant safety, a base for family futures. Now, for millions, it's a daily fight to stay okay. UK housing costs are 44% higher than similar countries. No other rich nation pays so much for a roof. In 2024, England's average house price is 7.7 times average pay, Wales, 5.9 times, London, a huge 12 times, 3 times the usual rate. Owning a home isn't a normal step anymore, it's a privilege, or for some, a burden. Renters face a wild market. Rents jumped 9.1% nationally last year, 11.6% in London. The average rent is now £1,270, up £270 since 2021, a 27% rise while pay grew only 19%. For the poorest quarter, 21% of income goes to landlords, for the richest, just 6%. Housing feels less like a home and more like a money drain, taking away hope and pride. Fear of losing a home never goes away as tough times come through the mail. This affects more than money, changing lives and futures. Young adults stay in childhood rooms or move between short-term places. Families say no to more kids or sell for less. The elderly face worry as rents and prices climb. The housing problem empties wallets and twists where opportunities lie. Londoners earn 17% more than the national average but, after housing, are 3% worse off. High costs stop people moving to job areas, slowing work in cities. Behind closed doors, poverty grows. 30% of British kids now live in poverty after housing costs, the highest in 10 years, spreading from London to the Northwest and West Midlands. The issue isn't new homes. The UK needs 300,000 yearly to keep up. Last year, only 210,320 were built, a gap that builds up. With 446 homes per 1,000 people, versus France's 560 or Germany's 516, the shortage is 4.3 million. A 1% rise in housing costs cuts national work by 0.14%, a drag over decades. This problem comes from choices, rules, interests, and oversights locking millions into constant worry. A country's future shows in its buildings, bridges, power lines, industries. Britain once knew this, with railways and ports driving growth. Now, that drive has slowed. Business spending is 9% of GDP, 27th of 30 OECD countries. For 24 of the last 30 years, the UK spent less than G7 peers. Matching the G7 average since 1990 would have added £1.9 trillion. Instead, recovery is weak, 3.9% growth in Q1 2025 after a 1.9% drop. Public spending averages 2.5% of GDP, the lowest in OECD. Plans suggest a drop to 1.75% by 2028, with a £700 billion gap by 2040. Roads crack, trains struggle, and internet lags. A £25 billion energy gap threatens green goals by 2030, with £1.6 trillion still missing through 2040. Experts say £80 billion yearly is needed in the 2030s, up from £55 billion recently. Skipping fixes costs time, potential, and dreams. Every unpoured pound delays chances. Britain's story was built on a promise: work, be valued, fall, get help, save, prosper. The agreement, based on trust, now tears. Debt hangs over the economy, public borrowing at 94% of GDP, fourth highest in rich Europe, set to hit 270% by 2070. Pensions, once 2% of GDP, now take 5%, forecast at 7.7% by 2070. Health spending may reach 14% of GDP by 2068, up from 7%. Social care needs £3.4 billion yearly to stay, £6.4 billion to help more. Safety nets weaken, replaced by checks. 14 million adults, 1 in 5, and 4.3 million children live in poverty, spreading beyond London. This isn't just money, it's about belief. Progress signs now show drift. The idea each generation does better flickers, confidence shakes. Wealth stays on paper, but its meaning changes. A country once sure of its way now drifts, haunted by past and doubt. Britain's falling apart isn't one big event, it's a habit of putting off spending, mixing strength with standstill, letting the people-government bond fade. What do you call a country that looks rich but leaves millions poorer yearly? What happens when a society accepts hard times, forgets goals, and learns to live smaller? If this moves you, subscribe, join the talk below. Decline isn't set, nor is a comeback. Sometimes, history speaks softly,